Welcome everyone. I'm Joti Balani. I am founder and managing director of FreshRiver.ai. We are a consultancy focused on Fortune 500 enterprises, helping them with strategy and delivery for their conversational AI and data transformation services around foundational models and also AI automation of workflows. And I'm joined today by, I'm going to pronounce your name correctly, hopefully, Amr Nour-Eldin, yes?
You got it surprisingly correct.
All right, yes. You are Vice President of Technology of LXT, yes?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I have a long history. Prior to joining LXT, I was with Nuance, and I had been at Nuance for a very long time. I was working in the R&D part of Nuance, the R&D division, working with speech for over 16 years. So focusing mostly on ASR, but also working on signal processing, a little bit of NLP. So I was, fortunate to really delve into the stuff that I really like in terms of signal processing, machine learning, all the good stuff.
The good stuff. Now you shifted to the data side of the equation. Tell us about that journey.
So I had, I had the view that from where I had been all those previous years, I had a lot of input to data basically feeds machine learning,
Yep.
right? So I felt that there's big potential in terms of how I can leverage my experience on that front.
So what is the thought you provide to the enterprises that are developing and deploying generative AI, right? When it comes to their data, what's, from a technology standpoint, what's the framework of thought that you're sharing with clients on how to think about it?
So, by their very nature, AI models, they learn and inherit the properties of the data they're trained on. In the past, the main hurdles to the evolution of AI, machine learning, and the underlying machine learning to where the models are today in terms of the performances that we expect, the two main hurdles were the inavailability of data at a large scale. Obviously with the internet, that's more or less kind of overcome. The second hurdle had to do with the lack of sufficiently advanced deep learning technology. So the deep learning techniques as well as the compute resources. Nowadays, GPUs are the big thing. So the history of AI suffered, from computational bottlenecks for a long time. So, all this background just to say that those were the focus of people working with AI. But now, with the proliferation of foundation models, in multiple modalities, it's evident that we've kind of, to a large extent, overcome these hurdles. So now the main focus for anybody, any organization trying to leverage, develop AI or generative AI, is the quality of the data, focusing on the quality of the data rather than the quantity, as had been. Now, quality, of course, was always a consideration, but it wasn't the only consideration. But now it should be really the primary focus now that we've overcome, those other hurdles. So what does quality? So as I kind of mentioned in the beginning, AI models learn and inherit, the properties of the data they're trained on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what key considerations should, organizations focus on, keep in mind when thinking about leveraging AI? As with any product, it's basically performance, but also now adhering, with ethical principles, basic principles. So now going back to data, what do these two, considerations translate to in terms of the properties of the data? So number one, accuracy. So you need high quality, right? So So accuracy, it can be expressed as representative of the domain that you're developing your generative AI model for. But it also needs to have the human component in terms of curation and making sure the quality is there. So that's on the accuracy. In terms of the following ethical best practices, you need to eliminate bias and offensive language content from the data. It's not a very easy task, and there's a lot of research going into that direction. You need to ensure diversity in the data in terms of race, age, gender, and other characteristics.
Is that largely a human effort, or do you use some level of synthetic data? I mean, what is?
So there are techniques that kind of attempt to automate the detection of biases in the data. Some of them, a lot of them are open source so that people can leverage.
Yep.
So you need to detect first and then de-bias, right? So it's an ongoing effort, right? But there is already some tools out there, but I don't think they still they're not at the same level as human annotation, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. You also need to consider privacy, data privacy and protection. You want to make sure that PII, personally identifiable information, is eliminated from the training data. You don't want your social security number to end up in ChatGPT's output or anything like that. You also need to consider not infringing on copyrights or IP, and want to make sure that your training data does the proper attributions, so data provenance.
It's asking a lot of the data.
Yeah, that's so. I mean,
It's a tall order.
you can kind of summarize all this into maybe 4 or 5 points.
Yeah.
Like in my mind, I always think of the 3 Ps: privacy, protection, and provenance. Now the last one, provenance, is going to help with model explainability and reproducibility, right? If you always keep track of the origin and properly attribute the data that you're using to pre-train or fine-tune, the models, then you kind of ensure or help at least reaching the goal of explainability, the model explainability and reproducibility.
So I know we're almost out of time, but one of the things that we're working with our clients on is the ability for them to be able to auditability, both from 3 things: regulation, legal, security. If they don't pass those audits, they won't be able to do this, right? So what's exciting you in the last 30 seconds? What are you excited about in the future, given LXT, and given the fact that you've worked with the technology and now you're working on the data? Like, data's a new oil, right?
Yeah.
They call it the family jewels of what companies own. What excites you?
So like I said, in the beginning, so I feel that the technology, we've gotten to a point where the technology is sophisticated and advanced enough. It's still going to improve, of course, as we go along, right? But I think the major kind of milestone was Transformers, right? So I feel like we're now at a stage where, yes, there will be still work to be done on the technology front, but the main piece, or focus should, where I think it should go is on the data. I think of machine learning models as raising a kid. So I have a daughter, so speaking from experience. So it's, training a machine learning model, you kind of give it the data that you want it to learn the patterns from. It's the same as when you're kind of raising a kid, you expose you form a particular environment around your child, right? So that in a way you're kind of leading them to learn specific patterns of behavior and so on. So
would you take it as far as giving birth and then having an epidural for the pain?
well, this
We
is,
can take that analogy.
This is a lot, way too much into science fiction now.
Hey, giving birth is not science fiction.
Well,
Women
I
go
mean,
through-
comparing AI to birth. Yeah.
Well, I do say it's like you give birth and then they're like infants that you have to continue to train them. And like you said, behavioral, right? Ethical
Yeah.
intelligence,
Yeah.
emotional. Well, Amr, thank you
And
so
they
much.
will grow and do unexpected things.
Yeah, and
right?
have hallucinations.
Exactly.
You got to
exactly.
correct them.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Amr, thank you so much. Enjoy
Thank
the
you,
rest of the
Jodi.
conference.
Thank you.
Thank you.